Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire our community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today, Melissa Hiemann, is a trauma therapist and author. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So, Melissa, what is trauma and how does it relate to our relationships with others?
Sure, so trauma is actually a response that we have to something that we feel very scared of. So it can be when we're growing up or even when we're older, where we feel a strong stress response. So we feel very strong emotions like our survival is being threatened. And these emotions in our body get trapped in our body. So it's not just trauma as in what most people think, as in they've seen a car accident, been in a car accident, or they've been to war and there's trauma in that sense. That there is those traumas, but there's also smaller traumas that greatly impact us as well. Like if we stood in front of the class and we were little and we got laughed at, and then that trauma response could be, I don't like doing public speaking anymore. And it can be micro traumas as well with our parents when they yell at us, or we've been left to cry it out as a baby. That can be a very large trauma for someone because there's no safety, there's no one there to help them with that survival response, and it gets stuck in their body. And how it can affect us in our relationships is if we do have that trauma, say with our primary caregivers growing up, where they yelled at us and were abusive towards us in any way, or they neglected us, what we do is we think on a subconscious level that that is a blueprint for how love is and how relationships should be. And so we unconsciously seek out people that were often like our parents. Unfortunately, if the parent wasn't very nice, we'll seek out a partner that is similar to them, because our body feels that that is normal. And so some people are like, why do I keep getting into bad relationships? Or why does this keep happening to me? Why do I find myself isolating myself and having a lot of conflict with anyone? And if we think back to our childhood and what we saw growing up, it can really give us some indication as to why these patterns are occurring in our lives in regards to relationships. With trauma usually happens in relationships. So we say trauma can be relational because it's happened with either a caregiver or an authority or someone else. And so we carry that trauma in our bodies, and we often carry it into relationships that we have as we become older, as we find a partner, but then even relationships with our kids, our co-workers, the people in the line with us at the shopping centre in the queue. We're all relating, and so certain things can get triggered that we don't even consciously know why, but that person's made us very angry, or we had a very strong emotional response. So we might say something or behave in a way that is maybe an overreaction to the actual circumstance, and we can't come in with it with a neutral mind, and that's usually because a trauma has been triggered from maybe a long time ago. And if people became more aware of that, they would be able to maybe seek help and find someone to help them work through it, so they can be a more peaceful person, so their relationships can be more peaceful, so they know how to work through conflict in a non-violent way. So yeah, it's really important that we're aware of trauma and how it can impact our relationships.
Could you explain the link between trauma and domestic violence?
Yeah, so that's a really important discussion, and I think it's a problem that is really being exacerbated at the moment. So what normally happens is with trauma is that we reenact our trauma. Okay, so I'll just give you an example for domestic violence because I have my own personal history of that. My mother watched her parents be in a domestic violence situation. So her father would drink alcohol, and he would get very triggered and angry and violent. And so my mother, as a toddler, felt she had to defend her mother and be strong. And then later, when my mum was in her 20s and she met my father, who was a lovely, peaceful man, she almost sabotaged that relationship because it didn't feel normal to her nervous system. That trauma had created a blueprint of no relationship should be violent, even though she didn't consciously want that. So she left my father and got with another man, and he was actually very similar to her father. He would actually do domestic violence in the house, and I witnessed that. And my little brother and sister were very young, and at 16 I had to help her leave that situation. But even though with all of that, when I became a young adult and got into a relationship, I was attracted to people that were controlling and abusive, and I ended up in a domestic violence situation myself. For some reason, my body was just drawn to that. So it's not in every circumstance, but in a lot, we're just recreating what we saw in childhood. I guess you could say I was the victim, but also my low self-esteem, my insecurity, and my allowance allowed me to stay in that relationship for a little while. And then when I started doing the healing work with a therapist, then I realized that, and I realized I could break this generational pattern and cycle.
What advice would you have for our viewers that are feeling like they're experiencing trauma in their relationships at the moment?
I would say that everyone is probably, if you're in a relationship with anyone, you're probably going to have experiences with trauma. And the way that you can indicate and know that you are is if you're having quite strong emotional responses. If you find yourself in a fear state, or in a very angry or controlling state where you want to change the other person's behaviour to make yourself feel better. Or we can replay what we saw in childhood and maybe want to start fights, or we saw our mother be very quiet, so we go very quiet and we don't speak our truth. So just being aware, just having a think about how did that look like for me growing up, and am I overly reacting or overly shutting down in my relationship with this person? If you feel like you're having some of these symptoms or these relational trauma issues, then definitely seek a professional, a therapist, to work through it if you believe there's something there.
That's such valuable and important information, Melissa. If you'd like to know more about Melissa and how trauma affects our relationships with other people, please go to her webpage on our website, wellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy Julie Makin will be talking about what is body intelligence and is it the path to inner safety. Welcome back. Our second guest is Julie Makin, a psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy, and we will be finding out if body intelligence is the pathway to inner safety. Welcome, Julie. It's so good to have you back.
Hey, Stephanie. Thank you.
So tell us, what is body intelligence?
Okay, so body intelligence is how our body responds to the environment, and it comes in from the five senses. So what we see, hear, feel, what we taste, what we smell. And our body's actually sending signals at like 300 k's per hour approximately, going up through the body, sending off chemicals. And our bodies have just got this innate knowing about what is right for us. And it does everything it can to protect us. For instance, you fall over, you put your arm out, you don't stop and think about it, the arm just automatically goes out because your body is protecting you.
And how can knowledge of body intelligence lead to inner safety?
Okay, so that knowledge of body intelligence leads to inner safety with us having an awareness. It starts with having an awareness of what's going on inside our body. And when we have that awareness, which comes in from our environment, so we're noticing what's going on in our environment, our body is taking it in through what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, and what we smell. And those signals are, being transferred transferred within our body at approximately 300 k's an hour going up to the brain. It's telling us, and it's letting off chemicals and all these kinds of signals, and your body is doing everything it can to provide you with signals as to whether or not you feel safe or whether or not you feel unsafe. And when we're feeling unsafe, you may notice things like the heart starting to race. You may notice, your legs might start to feel unsteady in certain situations, or you might start to sweat a little bit. Maybe it's that interview or something. You may even notice at times that your voice might start to have a bit of a tremor on it. So these are signals that your body is sending you that you don't feel safe. Perhaps when you're feeling a sense of anxiety, let's just say that you walk into a room full of people that you don't know, and then all of a sudden you might feel your heart start to pound, or your legs might start to feel unsteady. You might even sweat a little bit. And in some cases, your voice might start to tremor a little bit, just stating that you don't feel safe. This is your body telling you that you don't feel safe. But it's good just to notice those things, and they're just basic signals as to, your body saying you are not safe, because when you feel safe, you feel a connection with people. Having a choice, once you have an awareness of that body intelligence and the acceptance that, okay, so my body's doing this, but you know what, I'm going to choose. I now have an awareness, and I am going to choose. You are now putting yourself back in control, and therefore you're able to plow forward a little bit better, because when we choose and when we have control, our body responds differently.
And how can we strengthen that awareness and increase our sense of choice in that moment?
Okay, so in that moment, you might like to try things like pushing your tongue to the top of your mouth, and it just helps to send signals to your body that, you are safe. You might try breathing techniques. You might, try eye contact with somebody that is safe, smiling with somebody, starting to get a connection with someone, because when we have connection with somebody, that puts us back into that place of safety. So that's what we're after. We want to feel safe.
Do you have any advice for our viewers on how they can proceed with this information and what they can do next?
Sure, okay. So if you feel that your body is perhaps responding just a little bit too much in the not safe area, I invite your viewers to start to seek professional therapy. It doesn't just have to be conscious mind therapy, but if you were to look for associations, find something that is right for you, because not all therapies are right for everybody. I promise that whatever it is that I do might not be right and suitable for some people, but just know that I personally feel that working with the body is where it's at, and I feel that that is backed up by, many different people. They might like to look at the Australian Hypnotherapy Association, or, but somatic experiencing is another one. But there's so many things that are out there, all different modalities, EFT, kinesiology, all of that kind of thing, that people can use. This is starting to connect with your body. And if people really want to go that little bit extra step and start actually grounding themselves in their body, I invite them to start practicing perhaps yoga or Tai Chi, definitely to help you start breathing properly, getting yourself back into your body, because you know what? Sometimes our body can be a really uncomfortable place to be.
Wonderful. That's great information. Thank you, Julie. If you would like to know more about body intelligence and inner safety and Julie Makin, please visit her webpage on our website healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll be back with another interesting guest and another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, root cause and somatic therapist Nicole Healy will be talking about finding safety and peace for yourself when you have a loved one experiencing addiction. Welcome back. Our last guest is root cause and somatic therapist Nicole Healy. She will be talking about finding peace and safety for yourself when a loved one is experiencing addiction. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Is it possible to find safety and peace for yourself when a loved one is experiencing addiction?
It can be, but firstly I want to speak into addiction. So addiction is any behaviour that we have a craving for, that when we participate in that behaviour we feel relief, and we will continue to do it even if it has heavy consequences on other areas of our life. It's also important to note that addiction does have a spectrum, so on the lower end of that scale will be things like scrolling on your phone, maybe using food to comfort yourself. On the higher end of the spectrum is things like alcohol, drugs, gambling and porn that obviously have a heavier impact on your life and usually do carry quite a stigma. Now, I realised with myself as I went through my own healing journey that I was using food for a lot of my life to soothe myself. It was my addiction. And that started when I was 4 years old and my father passed away in a car accident, and we had a lot of people come to support us, to give us love, and they brought food. And of course it's always the yummy treat type of food. So I was trying to recreate that love and support throughout my life. Anytime that I felt like I was anxious or overwhelmed or went through something challenging, food became my source of support. So when you think about addiction like that, I hope it helps you to maybe give yourself some compassion for maybe your own behaviours, and to hopefully see your loved one as addiction not being something that is bad about them, but it's a coping mechanism. Now, when we think about loving someone in addiction, it is a long-term traumatic situation, and you will most likely be going through trauma, and this will affect you in ways you don't maybe realise, like your nervous system, the way your body responds. Now, addiction is like a roller coaster, and we think about our loved one and it's crisis, things are okay, maybe they drop low, like a roller coaster, and it continues over and over, and it really has no, I guess, formal way that it goes. We don't know what each day is going to bring, so we're holding on, bracing ourselves, and usually us loved ones jump on that roller coaster with them, trying to support them, trying to be there for them. So can you imagine what happens to our nervous system, to our body, when we're on that roller coaster, riding the highs and the lows, but we don't know when they're going to happen? Our nervous system goes into a survival response.
So how can this affect our nervous system?
So typically there are 4 different states the nervous system can respond in, which will be fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And we don't choose which one we go to. This is just our body trying to survive. It can sometimes refer back to how we responded, maybe like me in childhood, but we don't really know. So there's no shame around what comes up for you, how you are adapting or surviving, but understanding that those responses are exactly how they sound. So freeze, you might feel stuck. You might feel unable to make decisions. You might set goals and not be able to do them. Flight might literally be that you will avoid everything, run away from it, get me out of here. Fight, going to fight. And that could look like your loved one has maybe just gambled or done the thing that's the problem, and you will find yourself in combative mode. And then fawn, we really are like a fawn. We're cowering, we're sinking away, we're usually in silence. And these responses are literally survival. So understanding that, I hope you can see that it is your body's way, your nervous system's way of trying to protect you. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But what we can do is actually start to give the nervous system support. And that can come in the form of seeking a somatic therapist. It can come from doing beautiful things like calming the body with the breath, taking a gentle walk, not trying to force the body to be one way or another, but just accepting it. Okay, I'm in flight mode. This is okay. This is where I am. How can I support myself to navigate this? Because when we label it with shame, it quite often can make it feel heavier and it can keep us stuck. So compassion to self, once again, is always crucial when we're supporting ourselves. It could also be the phone rings at 2 a.m. and you can feel your body go into maybe a freeze response. Too scared to answer it because you don't know what you're going to hear at the other end. Almost like if you think of yourself being on that addiction roller coaster, you're holding on to that guardrail for dear life, bracing yourself for whatever is going to come next. And there is a lot of chaos when we love someone in addiction, we know that. So being kind to yourself, if you can't follow through on goals you set, if you can't communicate calmly sometimes because you feel yourself go into that fight mode and you're overwhelmed, we can shame ourselves for those responses, but when we understand them, that's when we can start to nurture ourselves and give them the space that they need to maybe allow you to show up in ways that you want. So the phone rings at 2 a.m. and maybe you go, it's okay, it's just a phone call, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. Your loved one does something that maybe initially you might feel a bit of anger or fear, you can calm yourself, think, okay, how do I want to respond to this rather than react? We can give ourselves some space and some kindness.
So what advice do you have for someone who is looking to find that sense of safety and sense of peace while also loving someone who's going through addiction?
I think the first thing is going, it's okay. I'm in survival mode. I have been through a lot of things. I'm trying to navigate things in a way that are helping me get through really challenging situation that we didn't choose to be in. And then looking outside of ourselves, seeking professional support, maybe looking into somatic support as another beautiful way to help yourself. And once again, always just being kind to you, giving yourself some grace and nurturing the parts of you that maybe need it the most, which is usually the parts that are screaming at us. Don't shame them. Try to give them some love.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you would like to learn more about finding safety and peace for yourself whilst loving someone who is experiencing addiction, or find out more about Nicole, you can visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and we'll say goodbye until next week.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.